Hi everyone, this is once again Rowye from Spain, and I'm here with a tutorial, which is not something I usually do, and I'm doing this because I received a couple questions about this topic, and this is how to render your models so that you can use them in your 2D art. All of my videos are sped up, and it's quite possible that it's not easy to tell what's going on, so this time I'm going to be doing it real time. I'll be talking as I do it. But let's get to it. So on Photoshop I have three different images. One of them is a stock image, which is the one you're seeing now, and then I have another couple of my artworks, and there's no characters in them. I removed them, and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in DAZ and I'm gonna render a simple model, and I'll put it in these images in a way that it fits. It's gonna more or less blend automatically. Of course, it always requires some process in Photoshop, but I generally like to do as much as I can in DAZ, so when I go into Photoshop I don't have so much work. And in DAZ I have a simple model. It is the Genesis 8 male, which comes for free with the software, and anyone can use it. And it's also pretty much okay for a lot of circumstances. And for the first one we're going to use the stock image I showed you before, and I want to do this first because it's the most simple one. And for this one what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the render settings that come by default in DAZ, and I'm just going to mess with that until it looks more or less what I want. So the first thing you want to do always in DAZ is add one source light. Even if you're only going to use the environment settings, you really want to add a source light, because otherwise DAZ by default has a source light that's attached to the camera, and what it's going to do is going to give you a very ugly frontal light, which is going to pretty much mess the render up. So I'm adding just a simple light for you to see the difference, and there you go. Now this is not very helpful when it comes to working in this mode, which is texture shaded. It can be a little bit of a problem, but if you want to work on it, the best thing you can do is probably just remove the light and then add another one when you want to render. But for now, so you can see the difference, I'm just gonna go into NVIDIA array mode, so it's gonna show me a preview of the render. And even if this light is not going to affect it, it has the default environment settings, so let's see what it does. Now when this is done, I will remove the light I have added, and you'll see the difference and why you want to add it, even if you're not using it. And so this is the render with that default settings, and this is my light, which is not really affecting it, but if I remove it, you'll see the difference quite enough. So this is without that light source, and what's happening is that is using a light source that's coming from whatever the perspective is, whatever the camera is. And we want to avoid this because it's just going to give us a very bland result, and it will eat all the shadows out, and yeah, it's just ugly. So now that we know what it looks like, we're just going to put back the light in to make sure that the render has some nice look to it, and then we can look at the image we have in Photoshop and tell what it is we need. And we see that most of the light is coming from the left side. There may be a little bit coming from the back, but I don't think it's going to reach the model if we place the model around here. So we're pretty much just going to rotate the original environment settings, and it might look just quite okay already. So let's go back to that, and what you want to do is you go to render settings, and you go to editor, and you go to environment, and here you have the dome settings, and the dome is what you would call the sky, and you can turn it on by going here, and this will draw the sky. It will obviously look a bit nuts, but that is this is what light that is reflecting on the model. And this is a little bit complicated to explain, I'm just not going to go into that, but you can make your own environment maps and cast whatever light you want. You can even take the image in Photoshop if you want and convert it into an environment map and have this figure lightened properly. So let's get this light rotated, and to do that it's gonna be pretty easy in this case. We're just gonna go to Doom Rotation, and we're gonna do is just set it to 180, since it's pretty much, I'm just eyeballing it, but I think that's pretty much what we need. And that's coming a little bit from the back. Let me check the Photoshop again. Probably not too bad, because there's more light in this area than here. We're gonna put it here. It's gonna come a little bit from the back of the character. And what I would do right now is maybe just render already. I think that light over here is a bit more drastic. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn the light on in the environment, and to do that I'm just gonna go into environment intensity and turn it up to maybe 1.5. See what happens. And I think it looks pretty good, so I'm just gonna go and render this. But before I render it, I'm gonna disable the Doom. And there you go. And so the render is done, and I'm gonna save it, and then I will stuff it into Photoshop and see what happens. So there you go, it's not too bad, it's not too great. Obviously I'm not trying to make this look exactly the same. I always do stuff on Photoshop later on. Like right now I feel like it needs a little bit of a yellow filter or an orange filter. And probably a lot more retouches. Let's try to do some maybe and see if we can fix it quickly. But this is pretty much the way I do it. I do not spend a whole lot of time in DAZ unless I really feel like I need to. And for now we can just quickly try to adjust it a little bit, and maybe this will do it. I'm also gonna add a little bit of atmosphere onto it. Let's say something like this. And there you go. I mean, it's not great, but it's also not horribly bad, right? And from these you can work on Photoshop, and you already have something pretty nice to work on. I mean, if you're gonna use a model from a photo, it's also gonna take a lot of adjustments, so you might as well get the pose you want and the model you want. So let's take a look at the next one, which will be a little bit more complicated. And this is the throne room, and I'm gonna use a little trick here. I do have still a few layers separated, so I'm gonna see what happens if I place the model somewhere in between these layers and make it a little nicer. But this one is not going to be extremely hard, but maybe I will try to get some of the color of the windows. There's another window over here that I might want to get color from. And so yeah, let's go in that and see what we can do for this one. So back in that, what I want to do is just, I'm going to keep this light, but it's kind of bothering me, so I'm just going to put it away, far away. And for this one, I'm still gonna keep the environment light, but what I wanna do is I'm gonna make it very dim, because I probably just wanna use it as a reflecting light, whatever light is coming from the other side. And this will be the side we have it set on now. So the first thing I will do is I'm gonna dim the light. I'm gonna set the environment intensity to probably about 0.25 and see what happens. It's going to be quite unnoticeable, but the thing is, this will be enough when we add more lights to just give a little bit of ambient light to the model. And the next thing I'm gonna do is add a spotlight. I usually work with spotlights all the time. I find like point lights are a bit harder to manage and to control, so I use spotlights for pretty much everything, and we'll start pointing it in the way I want it. This is going to be the main source of light, and to accomplish this and make sure I keep this point of view, because I cannot move this light any further and control it in a comfortable way, what I will do is add a camera so that I can move the perspective view and keep the camera always on display, so I can go back to the camera and render from this exact point of view. So to add the camera and do that, what I do is just copy the active view, which is perspective view, and there you go, we have a camera. Now we can go in here and we have the camera view, and then we can go back to perspective view and move it around, and we make sure that we still have that point of view saved. So I'm gonna move the light far away. I want to create the feeling that it's still some sort of a sunlight, and so there you go. This will be the light that comes maybe from the broken window. Let's see. Yeah, that will do it. So it's probably gonna be pretty much at this height. And one trick to point the light right is just go into spotlight camera. So now I am the light and I can move it around. So I can point it to the man, can move it forward or backwards. I'm gonna put it over here, and as you see in the render preview, it's pretty much not there. So what you want to do is you're gonna go into lights, and then I will go to luminous flux and augment that number over here. And if you want a strong light, you can add a couple zeros without fear and see what happens. As you see, it's getting some light already. Let's go into camera view and see what it's going to look when we render. It's obviously not enough, so I'm actually going to add another 0 and see. Okay, that's much more like what we wanted. As you see, we still keep the ambient light from the environment. And yeah, I think I'm going to add another spotlight, because it seems like it's two directional right now. So let's go back into perspective view and add another spotlight. And what I'm gonna do at this time is copy the settings of spotlight 1. You see, copy selected item spotlight 1, and what that's gonna do is it's gonna create another light right on top of this one, which is called spotlight 2. And we can do the same thing as before and go to the spotlight camera and then move it around, and we can also rotate it. And now we can go back to the camera view and see what it looks like. I guess that's a little bit more fitting. It's maybe a little bit too strong, or maybe the ambient light is too dim, but we can play with that. Let's check the environment settings again. Maybe we'll put this at 0.5. And this looks a little bit better, but I still feel like these lights are maybe too strong. So let's take down the numbers a little bit, and I'm gonna change the 5 for a 0, and I'm gonna change the previous one as well. And so we get a little less burnt result, and I feel like this is much more fitting. And so we have the base set up, and let's see what else we can do to it. And looking back at what we have in Photoshop, I'm starting to feel like I'm gonna have to make those two spotlights a little more dim as soon as I start adding color. But before I do that, I'm just gonna start trying to figure out what are the colors I want to add to the model. And so as you see, we have some blue and cyan hues over here. We have some yellows over here. We have some reds over here. So if the model is going to be more or less around here, maybe these are the colors that we want to add. So there would be a little bit of yellow coming from the front. And I'm going to stick to my tactic of using spotlights. One thing I want to do before that though is just remove the ground, because the shadow is not fitting anymore, and a lot of the time you're gonna have to do it again in Photoshop anyway, unless you have a very flat floor. You might be able to use this one, but a lot of the time it's just better if you create your own shadow. So I'm gonna disable that, and I'm gonna start adding spotlights. The first one is just gonna be free, and I'm gonna move it around. I'm gonna add some of the yellow light, but for that I'm gonna switch to perspective view, so I have more control and I can move the camera around. And yeah, I'm just gonna place it in the proper place. I might as well just use the spotlight camera, make it easier for myself. And after that I'm just gonna change the color. Once again, I'm trying to simulate where the light is coming from in the background that I have made. So I'm trying to think more or less where the yellow window was and where I want the yellow color to be. But also what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pretty much put it close to the character, because I want to add several kinds of colors. So I'm also gonna shed the spread angle a little bit, make it smaller. And that way I make sure that not too many colors mix with each other. And so now I'm gonna change the light to a yellow color, and I'm gonna add a couple zeros to the luminous flux. It might be a little more, a little too much, but we'll see. That's way too much. Let's just take 1 zero down. And that might be not too bad. Let's just move it a little bit. Too much to the right. Maybe I'll get it a little bit closer. Let's see what this is like in camera view. Yeah, it's more or less acceptable. Maybe I want it a little bit lower. Let's do it from here. Okay, I guess this is somewhat acceptable. Maybe it should point down a little bit more. There you go, because I want other colors to touch the model. So let's create another spotlight and change the color. And this time I'm gonna copy the settings of this last spotlight. And I'm pretty much just gonna change the position and the color. So I'm gonna go into spotlight camera mode, move away to make it a little bit easier, and move it around. I think I'm gonna have the cyans and the blacks, the blues, a little bit higher and coming from a little bit more of a side position. So there you go. Now I'm gonna change the color and see what happens, if that will change. So I'm gonna make it medium blue. There you go, that's a little much. Maybe just not in the right place. Let's take it down a little bit. And let's check with camera view. And I think it's not too bad. It looks a little strange. As I said before, you're gonna have to do changes in Photoshop anyway. But let's check Photoshop. And it's not super bad. So I'm gonna add a third spotlight with a little bit of reds. That's gonna go lower. And I'm gonna do again the same process. I'm gonna repeat the spotlight, and I'm gonna move it then in camera mode. And then I'm gonna change the color. I'm gonna make it red. And once again, I don't think this would be ready for work, but I'm just showing you the techniques. And of course, this and everything else requires a lot of adjustments, but I'm just doing it quick for you to see what it is that I do and how you can get it to work more or less the same way with your own adjustments and in a per case basis. So one thing I don't like is the blue light. I feel like it's too blue. It's not representing the color I have in the windows. So I'm just gonna take it a little bit more into the green zone. And I'm gonna give it a little bit more of saturation. And there you go. I think I want it a little bit closer to the model. And let's see. To be honest, I'm not super convinced that it's gonna work, but it's trial and error, so let's check it out. But before I check it out, I'm gonna add a second camera because I wanna keep this one. But in this image, the perspective is it's like from low to high. I really don't know how to say that in English, but you understand. So I want to change the camera in that to reflect that. And so I'm gonna add a new camera, and I'm gonna copy the active view, which is camera 1. And this one I can move around and keep the other view. So I'm gonna try to adjust it so that it looks a bit more like in the background I have. And one way to do that is we need a more dramatic perspective. So I'm gonna play with the focal length. And then I'm gonna turn the camera down. This might be maybe a little extreme, but let's see. I think it is too extreme. Let's modify it before. All right, let's try like this. So I stop the render when it's more or less finished. I'm gonna save it. Just gonna give it a different number. And I'm gonna import it into Photoshop. See what happens. And once again, this is not extremely good, but it is also not extremely bad. You have the shades of red, you have the shades of yellow, you have the shades of blue coming from the windows. And we could probably put it in between some of these layers. I don't have much control right now. I don't remember which layers are what, but more or less, just there you go. And I think that's not too bad. I mean, can always get better, that's for sure, but it's acceptable. I'm gonna do a quick shadow. And there you go. Once again, this is just for you to see a technique. I'm not trying to get it perfect because it would take me a little bit more of time, but the results are not too bad, and now you know how to go about it. And so we're gonna go for the last one, which is the one which has a little bit more of a dramatic lighting. I've also emphasized a little bit the lights that I had and the colors, so we can play a little bit with stronger lights and stronger colors. And in the end, this probably gives a bit more of a 3D look, but it's also very nice, and I think it's worth it. And for this one, I'm just gonna go back to that, and I'm gonna do this one without pretty much speaking all the time, because I'm just gonna use the same techniques. I'll make a comment when I feel like I have to explain something, but otherwise I'm just gonna play some nice music for you guys, and I'm still gonna leave it in real time so it's easy to tell what's going on. And yeah, let's get to it. The first thing I want to do is go back to the camera that I had before. I'm actually gonna remove the second camera just to remove some clutter, and I'm gonna also remove the spotlights to start from scratch. And as for the dome orientation, I think I'm gonna put it in front of the guy, just to create a little bit of ambient light. I'm gonna lower the number a little bit more though. There you go, and now I'm gonna start adding spotlights. adding a little bit of a backlight. This is to represent whatever light is coming from the window, and these are always very nice, and you can use it in many circumstances. And yeah, they emphasize the silhouette of the character, and yeah, these are very much used in programs like ZBrush and all sorts of renders, because it gives you like a third light source that's yeah, it's very sharp edges, and it's the eye candy regardless of what you have. So there it is. Now I'm gonna put it in DAZ, and I think maybe the environment light is a little too much. Let's see what happens if we remove it completely. Okay, that's not enough ambient light, but we can maybe make it 0.1. Maybe 0.15, because this doesn't seem enough. There you go, that's gonna be better. So I'm gonna render it and see what happens. So I'm gonna stop the render before it's finished. I think it's good enough. Save it with a different number. And then I'm gonna add it to Photoshop. And there you go, not too bad at all. I mean, once again, you would need a lot of adjustments to get this to work, especially this one is much more complex light setup. But as you see, he's getting the orange light from these screens, he's getting the white light from this screen, he's getting the white light from this one, he's getting the blue light from this one, and he's getting some from the background as well with the contour and this strong white light. And I think it works quite well. So this is it for today's tutorial. As you see, we have learned a few tools, but not a lot. We haven't gotten very complicated. In the end, it's just about how many light sources you want to use and how many adjustments you want to do on Photoshop. If you want to get it perfect in that, it's gonna probably be a little hard. So I'm assuming you know a little bit of Photoshop at least to fix it. But I hope it was helpful, and let me know in the comments. Also, keep the questions coming. This came out of a question in a comment, so you might just give me more ideas to make more tutorials. And also tell me if you like this one, because I'm a little self-conscious. This is my first video tutorial ever. So yeah, let me know. And if you want to support me, you can buy me a coffee. The link will be down in the description. And once again, I hope this was helpful. Yeah, I'll see you the next time.